The bus does not slow down when it reaches the gates. It doesn't need to. The road is empty, the land flat and unforgiving, stretching for miles in every direction. No towns, no crowds, no witnesses. When the steel doors finally open, the message is clear without a single word being spoken. This is not a prison you pass through. This is a place you disappear into. For the men being transferred here, ADX Florence is not just another stop in the federal system. It is where time stops meaning anything, and survival becomes something far more complicated than staying alive. ADX Florence sits in Fremont County, Colorado, surrounded by open fields and distant mountains that might as well not exist. From the outside, it looks sterile, almost quiet. But that quiet is deceptive. This facility was built in the early 1990s after a series of violent incidents inside federal prisons convinced authorities they needed something stronger than control units and segregation wings. The murder of 2 correctional officers at USP Marion in Illinois in 1983 accelerated that decision. The federal government wanted a place where the most dangerous inmates could be completely contained, physically, socially, and psychologically. From its opening in 1994, ADX was designed to eliminate risk, not rehabilitate. Every architectural choice reflects that goal. Thick concrete walls, narrow corridors, remote control doors, cells engineered to prevent communication. Transfers to ADX are not random. They are the result of classification decisions made deep within the Bureau of Prisons, often after years of documented violence, escape attempts, or continued criminal influence from behind bars. By the time an inmate is placed on the transfer list, the system has already decided that no other prison can hold them safely. Most inmates do not arrive at ADX directly from court. They come from other high-security prisons, USP Florence High, Terre Haute, or former facilities like Marion, after repeated incidents. Assaults on staff, murders of fellow inmates, organizing gang violence, terrorist communications. In some cases, the reason is not what the inmate did inside prison, but what authorities believe they could still do. Influence alone can be enough. Leadership alone can be enough. At ADX, potential threat is treated the same as proven violence. The journey itself is deliberately disorienting. Inmates are often shackled at the wrists, waist, and ankles. Movements are tightly scripted. Communication is minimal. Upon arrival, there is no orientation in the traditional sense. No welcome. No explanation of what life will look like beyond a set of rules and warnings. The inmate is escorted to a cell that will soon define the boundaries of existence. 7 feet wide, 12 feet long, poured concrete on all sides. The door closes with a sound that carries weight. It is not loud, but it is final. Inside the cell, nearly everything is built into the structure. The bed is concrete. The desk is concrete. The stool is concrete. The sink and toilet are stainless steel, controlled from outside the cell. A narrow window, positioned so high that it is impossible to see anything but sky, lets in light but no sense of location. Some inmates have said that after enough time, they forget which direction the prison even faces. Day and night blur. Seasons pass unnoticed. ADX officials have long maintained that this level of isolation is necessary. According to Bureau of Prisons policy, ADX houses inmates who pose the greatest threat to national security, institutional safety, or public safety. That list has included domestic and international terrorists, organized crime leaders, cartel bosses, serial killers, and inmates who have killed while already incarcerated. The logic is simple. If someone cannot be controlled anywhere else, they must be controlled here. But control at ADX is not just physical. It is sensory. Inmates spend 22 to 23 hours per day alone. Meals are eaten in the cell. Conversations are rare and often shouted through vents, if they happen at all. Recreation, when permitted, takes place in small concrete enclosures, sometimes described by prisoners as cages or dog runs, open to the sky, but enclosed on all sides. Human contact is limited to brief interactions with staff, often conducted through thick glass or solid doors. For many inmates, the most disturbing part is not the confinement itself, but the silence. At ADX, silence is constant and intentional. There is no yard noise, no cell block chatter, no background hum of prison life. Over time, that silence becomes oppressive. Former inmates have described hearing things that weren't there, voices, footsteps, whispers, simply because the human brain struggles to function without stimulation. Mental health experts have repeatedly warned about the psychological consequences of prolonged solitary confinement, and ADX Florence has been at the center of that debate for decades. Court filings, internal reports, and testimony from former prisoners describe symptoms ranging from insomnia and panic attacks to hallucinations, paranoia, and emotional collapse. Some inmates began self-harming. Others attempted suicide. Several succeeded. One of the most cited cases involves inmates with pre-existing mental illnesses who were nonetheless placed in extreme isolation. Lawsuits filed against the Bureau of Prisons in the 2000s alleged that ADX had become a de facto warehouse for the mentally ill, despite its original purpose. These legal challenges eventually led to changes, including step-down programs and expanded mental health evaluations. But even with reforms, the core structure of ADX remains unchanged. What makes a transfer to ADX feel like a death sentence is not the length of time assigned there, but the uncertainty. There is no fixed sentence to ADX itself. In theory, inmates can earn their way out through good behavior and compliance, progressing through increasingly less restrictive units. In practice, that process can take decades or never happen at all. Some inmates have spent 20 years or more in near total isolation, watching the world change through a slit of reinforced glass. High-profile prisoners have reinforced ADX's fearsome reputation. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was transferred to ADX after receiving multiple life sentences for his bombing campaign. Ramzi Youssef, a key figure in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, was sent there due to ongoing security concerns. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman arrived at ADX in 2019 after U.S. authorities concluded that no other facility could prevent him from continuing to direct cartel operations. In each case, ADX was not about punishment alone. It was about containment at all costs. But ADX is not reserved only for names the public recognizes. The majority of its population consists of inmates few outside the prison system will ever hear about. Men whose crimes or prison behavior convinced authorities they could not safely exist in any other environment. For them, the transfer often feels less like a disciplinary move and more like an erasure. Contact with family becomes limited and heavily monitored. Visits, when allowed, take place behind glass, with strict time limits. Over the years, relationships fade. Children grow up. Parents die. Life continues elsewhere. Inside ADX, time behaves differently. Days are measured not by events, but by routine. Meals sliding through slots, lights turning on and off, guards passing silently. There are no milestones, no holidays, no sense of progress unless one is granted entry into the step-down program, and even then, progress can be reversed instantly for minor infractions. Former inmates have described a constant feeling of being watched, even when alone. Cameras monitor nearly every movement. Doors are opened remotely. The lack of human presence is deliberate. It reduces risk to staff and reinforces the inmate's isolation. Over time, many prisoners stop speaking altogether, conserving energy and emotion. Others talk to themselves, simply to hear a human voice. This is why transfers to ADX Florence inspire fear even among hardened inmates. In the federal prison system, ADX is understood as the end of the line, not because it guarantees death, but because it strips life down to its barest, most mechanical form. There is no chaos here, no violence spilling through corridors, no chance encounters. Everything is controlled, and that control is absolute. As Chapter 1 closes, the reality becomes unavoidable. ADX Florence is not just a prison designed to hold the worst offenders. It is a place built to sever people from the world entirely. And for those who pass through its gates, the question is no longer how long their sentence lasts, but how much of themselves will still exist by the time they ever leave. Inside ADX Florence, the body adapts faster than the mind. Muscles learn the limits of a 7 by 12 foot cell. Steps become measured. Movements become efficient. But the mind has no walls thick enough to lean against. With no conversation, no unpredictability, and no meaningful human contact, thoughts begin to turn inward, and then against themselves. The days begin the same way every time. Lights activate on a schedule controlled elsewhere. A tray slides through the slot in the door. The food is adequate by federal standards, but taste becomes irrelevant after a while. Eating is no longer a break in the day. It is simply something that happens. After the tray is retrieved, silence returns. Hours pass with nothing to mark them except the distant mechanical sounds of doors opening and closing somewhere far down the corridor. Most inmates arrive at ADX believing they are prepared. They have survived county jails, state prisons, high-security penitentiaries. They have lived through violence, lockdowns, riots, and segregation units. But ADX is different in ways that are not immediately obvious. There is no chaos here to react to, no hierarchy to navigate, no alliances to form. The absence of stimulation becomes its own form of pressure. At first, many inmates focus on routine as a survival strategy. Push-ups, sit-ups, walking laps inside the cell, reading anything available, writing letters that may or may not be delivered. Some keep meticulous schedules, dividing the day into blocks of activity to create the illusion of structure. Others mark time on the wall, counting days, then months, then years. But eventually, even routine begins to collapse under the weight of repetition. The isolation at ADX is not accidental. It is central to the facility's purpose. By cutting inmates off from one another, the Bureau of Prisons aims to eliminate the possibility of coordinated violence, escape attempts, or external influence. From a security standpoint, the system works. ADX has seen remarkably few violent incidents compared to other high-security prisons. But that success comes with a cost that is harder to measure. Human beings are not designed to exist without social interaction. Decades of psychological research have shown that prolonged solitary confinement can alter brain function, emotional regulation, and perception of reality. At ADX, these effects are not hypothetical. They play out daily behind concrete walls. Former inmates have described how their sense of time deteriorated first. Without external cues, days stretch endlessly, while months seem to vanish without memory. Some report losing track of basic facts about their own lives, ages, dates, even names of people they once knew well. Memory becomes unreliable when nothing new enters the mind to anchor it. Then come the sensory distortions. Sounds seem louder or closer than they are. The hum of ventilation systems takes on rhythm, sometimes interpreted as voices or music. Shadows shift in ways that feel intentional. For inmates confined alone for years, the brain begins creating stimulation where none exists. This is not imagination in the creative sense. It is a coping mechanism pushed to its breaking point. Mental health services do exist at ADX, but access has historically been limited by the same security concerns that define the facility. Clinical interactions are often brief, conducted through doors or behind glass. Trust is difficult to establish in an environment built on control and surveillance. For inmates experiencing severe psychological distress, asking for help can feel risky. Any display of instability may result in further restrictions rather than relief. This creates a paradox. The behaviors that signal a need for mental health care are often treated as disciplinary issues. Self-harm, outbursts, refusal to follow orders. These actions are seen through a security lens first. In some cases, inmates were placed on suicide watch in even more restrictive conditions, reinforcing feelings of punishment rather than support. Legal challenges have exposed some of these contradictions. In the early 2010s, lawsuits argued that the Bureau of Prisons knowingly subjected mentally ill inmates to conditions that worsened their illnesses. Court filings included testimonies describing inmates smearing feces on walls, screaming for hours, or becoming completely unresponsive after years in isolation. These were not isolated incidents, but patterns. One particularly troubling aspect of ADX life is the uncertainty surrounding release from isolation. Unlike a court sentence, placement at ADX does not come with a clear end date. Progress depends on compliance, behavior assessments, and administrative decisions that may feel arbitrary to the inmate experiencing them. A single infraction, real or perceived, can reset years of progress. The step-down program, introduced in response to legal pressure, was designed to provide a path out of extreme isolation. In theory, inmates who demonstrate sustained good behavior can move to units with slightly more interaction and privileges. In practice, the process is slow and opaque. Many inmates report not understanding what is expected of them or why their progress has stalled. This lack of clarity becomes another psychological stressor. Hope exists, but it is fragile and easily crushed. Some inmates stop trying altogether, concluding that effort makes no difference. Others become hypercompliant, suppressing any emotion or reaction that could be interpreted negatively. Neither approach is healthy, but both are rational responses to an environment where control is absolute. The impact of ADX extends beyond the inmates themselves. Families on the outside experience their own version of isolation. Communication is heavily monitored. Phone calls, when permitted, are short and infrequent. Visits occur behind thick glass, with no physical contact. For spouses, parents, and children, the person they knew slowly changes or disappears. Children grow accustomed to seeing a parent as a distant figure on the other side of reinforced barriers. Conversations become strained, limited by time and the presence of monitoring staff. Over the years, many families drift away, not out of abandonment, but exhaustion. Maintaining a relationship under these conditions requires emotional resources that few people can sustain indefinitely. Even for inmates without mental illness at the time of arrival, the effects of prolonged isolation can be profound. Emotional flattening is common. Joy, anger, sadness, all become muted. This may look like stability from the outside, but it often reflects a deeper withdrawal. Feeling nothing becomes safer than feeling anything at all. Some inmates develop elaborate internal worlds to cope. They replay memories in precise detail, reliving moments from childhood or earlier life again and again. Others imagine future scenarios, planning conversations or events that may never occur. These mental exercises provide temporary relief, but they can also blur the line between reality and imagination over time. What makes ADX particularly devastating is that it removes the small human elements that make imprisonment tolerable elsewhere. In other prisons, even in high-security settings, inmates interact during meals, work assignments, or recreation. Conflicts arise, but so do relationships. At ADX, there is nothing to negotiate, nothing to belong to. Identity erodes in the absence of social mirrors. Correctional officers at ADX operate under strict protocols that limit interaction. This is for their safety, but it also reinforces the dehumanizing atmosphere. Officers become moving parts in a system rather than people. Inmates become risks rather than individuals. The emotional distance is intentional and effective. Over time, many inmates report a growing fear that they are losing themselves. Not in dramatic ways, but quietly. Vocabulary shrinks. Emotional responses dull. The ability to hold a conversation weakens. When interaction does occur, even brief exchanges can feel overwhelming. Some inmates begin to dread the idea of release, not because they want to stay, but because they no longer trust their ability to function outside isolation. This is the hidden paradox of ADX Florence. It succeeds in neutralizing threats, but it does so by creating an environment that can fundamentally alter the human mind. For inmates who eventually leave, whether to a lower security prison or back into society, the damage does not disappear at the gate. Former prisoners have described struggling with crowds, noise, decision-making, and basic social interaction long after release. As Chapter 2 draws to a close, the picture becomes clearer and more unsettling. ADX Florence does not rely on brutality in the traditional sense. There are no constant beatings, no riots, no visible chaos. Instead, it employs something far more subtle and enduring: silence, isolation, and time. And for many who live inside its walls, those forces prove more punishing than any physical restraint. The question that lingers is not whether ADX Florence is effective, but what it costs, and who ultimately pays that price. For most inmates, the fear of ADX Florence begins long before they ever see its walls. Within the federal prison system, its name carries weight. It is spoken quietly, often as a warning. Do the wrong thing, cross the wrong line, become too dangerous or too influential. And this is where you end up. By the time an inmate reaches ADX, that warning has already come true. What remains is the slow realization that the prison is not designed to punish behavior, but to erase risk entirely, no matter the human cost. The longer someone stays at ADX, the more distant the outside world becomes. News arrives late, filtered, and incomplete. Technology advances, laws change, cultures shift. All of it happens somewhere else. Inmates learn about major events through brief news segments or secondhand information, if they learn at all. Time does not move forward here, it accumulates. Years stack on top of each other without markers, creating a sense of permanent suspension. For those who attempt to leave ADX through the step-down program, the transition is often disorienting. Units with more privileges still feel restrictive compared to ordinary prisons, but they introduce something inmates may no longer know how to handle: interaction. Group recreation, shared spaces, and conversation, elements that once defined prison life, can trigger anxiety after years of isolation. Some inmates struggle more during step-down than they did in solitary confinement. Former prisoners have described feeling exposed when they are no longer alone. Noise becomes unbearable. The unpredictability of other people feels threatening. Simple choices, where to sit, when to speak, how to respond, become overwhelming. The survival skills that worked at ADX do not translate well elsewhere, and unlearning them takes time many inmates are never given. Not everyone makes it out. Some inmates die at ADX, whether from natural causes, suicide, or complications tied to long-term isolation and stress. Each death reinforces the prison's reputation as a place people do not leave in any meaningful sense. Even when an inmate survives physically, the version of themselves that entered ADX often does not survive intact. The Bureau of Prisons has defended ADX Florence as a necessary institution. Officials point to the absence of riots, the low number of assaults, and the containment of individuals who once posed serious threats. From a security perspective, ADX works exactly as intended. It neutralizes, it isolates, it prevents influence from spreading beyond its walls. But effectiveness does not equal humanity. Over the years, scrutiny from journalists, courts, and human rights organizations has forced the Bureau of Prisons to acknowledge some of the damage caused by extreme isolation. Reforms have been introduced: expanded mental health screenings, improved step-down pathways, and limits on placing severely mentally ill inmates in long-term solitary confinement. Yet critics argue these changes address symptoms rather than the core problem. The core problem is philosophical. ADX Florence represents a belief that some people are beyond rehabilitation, beyond management, beyond trust. Once an inmate is labeled in this way, the system shifts from correction to containment. The goal is no longer to prepare someone for reintegration, but to ensure they can never harm again. That goal leaves little room for dignity or hope. High-profile cases continue to shape public perception. When Joaquin El Chapo Guzman was sentenced and transferred to ADX, prosecutors openly stated that the move was necessary to prevent him from continuing cartel operations. The message was unmistakable: ADX is where influence goes to die. But influence is not the only thing lost there. Identity, autonomy, and mental stability often follow. For inmates serving life sentences, ADX can become a permanent reality. With no possibility of release, there is little incentive for the system to invest in their rehabilitation. The step-down process may exist on paper, but for those deemed perpetually dangerous, progress is theoretical. They remain in place year after year, watching the sky through a narrow window. Families on the outside are left to grapple with a different kind of loss. Their loved ones are alive, but unreachable in any meaningful sense. Conversations become strained. Emotional connections fade. Over time, some families stop visiting, not because they stop caring, but because each visit reinforces the distance rather than closing it. For society, ADX Florence raises uncomfortable questions. How much isolation is justified in the name of security? At what point does prevention become punishment for potential rather than action? And what responsibility does a system have to the minds of those it controls, even when their crimes are severe? There are no easy answers. ADX exists because of real violence, real failures, and real fear. The inmates housed there are not misunderstood innocents. Many committed acts that shattered lives and demanded accountability. But accountability does not automatically require obliteration of the human psyche. The challenge lies in balancing safety with the recognition that even the worst offenders remain human. As the years pass, ADX Florence continues to operate much as it always has, quiet, controlled, and largely invisible. It does not dominate headlines unless a notorious name appears on its roster. For the men inside, however, it is an all-encompassing reality. The walls do not move. The rules do not soften. The silence does not break. This is why transfers to ADX Florence feel like a death sentence. Not because they guarantee death, but because they represent an end to normal human existence. Life is reduced to survival, thought to endurance, and time to something that must simply be endured. When an inmate finally leaves, if they ever do, the world they return to is often unrecognizable, and they are no longer the person who left it. In the end, ADX Florence stands as a symbol of how far a system is willing to go to maintain control. It is the final measure, reserved for those deemed uncontainable elsewhere. And for those who pass through its gates, the sentence is not just measured in years. It is measured in what is taken, piece by piece, until almost nothing remains.